Hey, folks, good evening, and thanks for joining me on Phantoms and Monsters Radio. I welcome you and all new listeners and members to the chat or to the channel, as well as first timers in the chat. And I hope that you can find tonight's subject and reports interesting. We had a bit of a screw up last week, but things are okay now, hopefully. So let's see if we can get through this. Now, gruesome humanoids, crawlers, ghouls, and gollums. Now, throughout the world, people have reported encounters with freakish, pale humanoid creatures that defy taxonomic classification. Now, over the past 2 decades, a new type of unknown humanoid cryptid has emerged. Now, these sightings represent a specific form of mythology that aligns with the earlier emergence of native traditions and indigenous lore. Now, these beings are not what people call creepypasta. They are entities born from a unique blend of urban legend with origins on the internet. Now, about 2012, an incredible phenomenon began to unfold as internet users started earnestly reporting frightening encounters with emaciated, pale, hairless humanoids that primarily crawled on all fours. Now, consequently, various obscure adaptations of these cryptid humanoids began to surface. But since then, a significant number of credible witnesses have claimed to have seen these beings, despite many appearing to be unaware of the urban legends. So, what's happening? Are we witnessing thought form or tulpa manifestations of these humanoids? If so, one must wonder or ponder what came first, the monster or the myth? Ask yourself, are these humanoids actual corporeal beings manifested by human mind and perceivable by others? Or are we witnessing the nexus of an unknown and monstrous humanoid species? You know, I wrote a book about this, the meme humanoids, and I really have no idea what we're dealing with. Uh, People see these things and keep reporting them, and it's been going now for over a decade. So they're, people are definitely seeing something. So listen to the reports, and we'll go from there and form your own opinion. But before I go any further, I want to mention that this channel is made possible by you clicking on the subscribe and like buttons and by sharing our programming. If you're watching us on YouTube, the super chat and super thanks donations are appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located below the chat box. Other donation links are also shown in the description. And thanks for your consideration. Now, your comments are always welcome. Tell me which accounts you find interesting in the presentation or suggestions for upcoming shows. I want to thank our chat moderators, Bernadette, Marla, Thomas, and Mike. Also want to thank Kevin and Mary at ESP. Now, if you're in the chat and do have a question, please use all caps, and we'll make an attempt to get to each one of them after my presentation. So, in this first account, a couple was driving at night in central Illinois when they observed a pale crawler humanoid peering from behind a tree. The witness's friend later encountered a similar humanoid. So they write to me and state, "Hello, sir. A couple of years back, my boyfriend and I were driving on the country back roads of central Illinois near Bloomington. It was about 9 o'clock p.m., cold and rainy, mid October, large wooded areas all around. We were in mid conversation when we both cut off at the same time and we were overcome with dread. To the right of the road was a 6 to 7 foot tall pale humanoid. Its arms were disproportionately long and thin. It didn't have any discernible facial features. It peered out from behind a tree and looked directly at us. We were silent for about 30 seconds, and I finally said, did you see?" And my boyfriend says, "Thank God you said something. I thought I was crazy." A few days later, our two friends were hanging out in their car at one of the local park areas, surrounded by woods and cornfields. The fields were recently harvested, so you could see all the way to the tree line. They said they saw something pale and incredibly thin and humanoid across the field. It ran kind of like a dog and it disappeared into the woods within seconds. At first, I thought it might be something different because I thought that what I saw was more humanoid. Then I discovered that thousands of people have reported seeing pale humanoids, naked, lanking things that move like dogs. There's apparently particularly a lot of sightings in Illinois, so that part adds up as well. Lots of reports from the 50s and 60s of pale humanoids as well. Really makes you wonder. Anyway, I am convinced there's an undiscovered humanoid living in America. We haven't proved that they exist because they're so fast and silent. They also hide in abandoned buildings, caves, and mines. I had read several of the posts on your site and see you wrote a book about these humanoids. So, in this next account, the witness details his sighting of a naked, glowing white crawler humanoid accompanied by a horned being while driving at night. Hoof prints in the mud were found the next day. And this came from Fams of Monsters radio listeners as well. Now, your YouTube, he states, your YouTube video couldn't have come at a better time about crawler humanoids, as I've been increasingly interested in the topic lately because of the possible sighting of one about a year ago. I was driving in the middle of nowhere in the country when I saw this very tall, extremely emaciated, limbs seemingly inches thick, naked, white to the point of glowing man. It turned away from the headlights just as we came upon it on the side of the road and proceeded to walk through a field towards a wetland refuge, which is further towards literally nowhere. There was no reason for anyone to be there, and the nearest house is roughly a mile away. Now, when we saw the car camera, we couldn't see it as it was just out of view, but we found the goat horn thing peeking out of some bushes. It had to have been tall as well, as it was sitting in the ditch poking out of some tall, thick trees or weeds. We went by the day after looking for some type of evidence and found nothing from the man, no footprints, not a thing. Now, the ground was extremely thick mud, and my sons and I couldn't find one single print, and our feet were sinking as we walked. Now, we did find what looked like large-sized hoof prints by the ditch, as if something walked out of it and down the field. It appeared to be bipedal. Now, the whole sighting was just all kinds of creepy as this man was not only naked, but so thin. It was almost like a scene from a horror movie. All kinds of strange things have been sighted in this area, from a UFO that came down above a power line leaching electricity with some cables back in the 80s to a black eyed kid account told by my son's best friend. I've recently only attached pale crawlers as a possibility to what I could have been, could have been seen. So I've been listening and reading all kinds of accounts lately. Thanks for furthering my research. And I kind of wonder if the witness observed two separate entities, or if the crawler humanoid may have shapeshifted into some type of horned being. I don't get much variation as far as something having horns that looks like the crawler humanoids, but who knows? Now, in this next account, a father and son are hunting on their cousin's land in Burnett County, Wisconsin, when they hear something near them. They both observe a small, pale faced being peeking from behind a tree. He states, "My cousin owns land in Burnett County, Wisconsin, where there's lots of hills and lots of deer. It's a tradition for us to hunt on this property. My dad, cousin, and all their friends pitched in to build a hunting shack on the property and put up tree stands. We hunt on a schedule, so none of us hunt in the same area at the same time, both for our safety and the hopes of getting a deer. Now, my dad and I took an ATV and headed up a hillside. The sun wasn't quite up yet, and we wanted to get set for sunrise. We marked which hill we were going up on the schedule inside the hunting shack. Nobody else was there yet, but we marked it anyway in case my cousin and his daughters showed up. We waited until about 9 a.m. and didn't see anything, not even as much as a squirrel. We decided to go get some coffee to warm up and then head back out. I followed my dad down to the path to the ATV, and we'd stop every so often to listen for deer. The only noise I heard were my footsteps and my dad's. About halfway to the ATV, I heard something else. It only happened when my dad and I walked. When my dad and I walk during deer hunting, I mimic his footsteps so we make less noise. I step at the same time as him. However, something behind me was making noise. It was like something was mimicking my footsteps. I spun around and peered into the trees. The sun still wasn't over the top of the hill yet, so we were in quite a bit of shade. I didn't see anything, so I continued to follow my dad down the hill. But I heard it again. This time, I turned around when we were still walking, and I saw something duck behind a tree. A pale face poked out from about 30 yards up the hill and hid behind a tree again. It poked out again, and this time stayed staring at us. I stopped and hit my dad's shoulder. He turned and saw it too. "Get to the four-wheeler," he whispered, and I didn't hesitate. I stared it down as my dad started up the ATV, and as we departed, the face's shoulder came out from behind the tree, followed by the rest of its gnarly, malformed, small human-like body. My dad hit the throttle, and we got back to the hunting shack as soon as we could. Nobody else was there, so we got in the truck and left. I haven't been in those woods since. My dad was and got a deer this morning and acts like it never happened. I still think about it far too often. Now, in this next account, a summer camper teen and a friend were involved with a night game when they see a very tall human like being, either dressed in white or naturally white. Spooky sighting. The witness states, "I grew up going to a summer camp in Northeast Pennsylvania every year, it was named Lake Greeley. One year when I was about 13, I had a strange experience that I still think about from time to time. Every night we played a night game, think manhunt, capture the flag, etc. Everyone, of course, gets into these games, and everyone in the camp meets before and after the game in the lodge. Now, for these games, everyone has would get decked out in all black camo, face paint, and the works. This is relevant. Another relevant detail is the woods were strictly off limit. Now, on this particular night, I can't remember exactly what we were playing, but I'm running around with a friend from my cabin, and we're up on the soccer field, which is lined on two adjoining sides by woods. She points something out to me in the tree line, probably about 100 yards away. It was an extremely tall figure that was either dressed in all white or was just white from head to toe. We looked at it for a couple seconds and watched it disappear into the woods, then reappear a few yards down the tree line. The next time it appeared, I was hit with this inexplicable dread and fear. I think she was too, but I won't speak for her. It was alone. It disappeared and reappeared in the tree line several times before we decided to run. I can't describe the terror. This thing made me feel no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it, it was just a person wearing all white. At the end of the game, the whole camp reassembled in the lodge, and we made a point to look around and see if anyone was wearing all white, and of course, no one else was wearing light colors. The only people who wouldn't have been at the all camp meeting were the nurse and the maintenance man. It wasn't the nurse, I'm quite sure it was way taller than the maintenance man. If it was some camper or counselor trying to sneak around and make out in the woods or something, they would have not changed into all white clothing. It was way too subtle for it to be an attempted prank. If a counselor was trying to scare some campers, they wouldn't have just appeared at the tree line a couple of times. Also, no one else seemed to notice this thing. This camp is in the middle of nowhere where there are no houses around. I've never had any paranormal, unexplainable experiences except for this, and it would be easy for me to dismiss it if it wasn't for the height of this thing and the inexplicable dread it made me feel. Now, in this next account, a U.S. serviceman stationed at a base in Iraq recalls a tall, dark demon humanoid that has infiltrated the facility. The locals called it the God of Death. Now, the witness states, I'm recalling my friend's story to the best of my ability. This is all classified according to him. He was stationed at a base in Iraq. The base was surrounded by a wall that had a guard post at various locations around the wall and one or two other locations where soldiers would keep post, including barracks. There was also a big abandoned warehouse on the base that was not being used. It had huge heavy doors that opened outward from the middle, which were always closed. Soldiers had to walk past this warehouse when switching posts. Well, one night when my buddy was in his barracks, gunshots went off. Everyone rushed to get geared up and figure out what was going on. Once they figured out the gunshots came from inside the base, they went to the location of the shots. Two soldiers were posted up, guns pointed at the old warehouse, and were freaked out. One of the doors to the warehouse was pushed slightly open. They yelled at the two soldiers to see what was going on, but the guys didn't budge. They said they saw something big and black was just running inside the warehouse. Once they calmed the two guys down, they did a sweep of the warehouse and found nothing. It took two soldiers to push the door shut again. The next night, there was screaming coming from inside the warehouse. They did a sweep, nothing. The next night, more screams. On the third night, another group of soldiers shifting locations opened fire. They basically had the same story as the first group. They said it was fast and basically moved faster than they could aim or shoot. Again, the door was pushed open. It took two guys to close it. After this went on for a while, the soldiers were found mentally healthy. A bigger investigation was set up. They pointed at some special cameras at the entrance to the warehouse, some set up by some guys outside, and waited for something to happen. Well, one night the door was pushed open on camera, and there was a demon that stepped out and started screaming bloody murder. The guards opened fire, and the thing sprinted fast faster than humanly possible back into the warehouse. Both doors were flung open and the thing just screamed. More soldiers came and did a sweep, but there was nothing. Around this time, the soldiers at the base started to piece a few things together. They had always known that a village near the base had a curfew and no one stayed out of their house past nightfall. So some went to investigate why. Long story short, the villagers told them that there was a god of death in the area and they dread not stay out past nightfall. Around the time they learned this, a special team came in with more equipment. Some bigger gunners were sent in, including my buddy with special recording equipment. They dragged the big doors open and set up inside the warehouse. It was pitch black, but they could see with their equipment. They set up so two guys sat facing each other, making a square of four guys total. About 4 hours went by without anything happening. Then the guy across from my buddy started making a hand signal. He was signaling that something was behind my friend. The guy to the right of my buddy was dozing off, and another soldier across from my friend was perfectly still. And my friend did a 180 from his chair to a crouched position, giving him room and the guy across from him to open fire. They said when he turned around, he just saw this demon humanoid about 9 feet tall with piercing eyes and as menacing as possible. When he opened fire, the thing was so fast it teleported to the side and up the wall until it was on the ceiling. They continued to open fire, but the thing was fast and kept appearing behind each of the soldiers, endangering them. Eventually, the soldiers got the equipment and abandoned the building. The camera captured everything. My friend was debriefed and told to never speak of it again. The building was demolished. The villagers related the demon to an old mass grave near the base, which after the events above was dug up and everyone was given a proper burial. I, without a doubt, did not recall anything correctly. I did not recall everything correctly. His version had way more detail. The way my buddy tells his story is so convincing and detailed that it's hard not to believe him, but the story is so incredible that it's very hard to believe at the same time. I wish I could get more out of him to type it out because it's simply amazing. Now, in this next account, a woman and her daughter who live in Iowa continuously caught sight of a hide behind being that was tall, bipedal, and pale. They were never ever able to capture an image. So the witness states, "Hello, my daughter and I regularly see a hide behind from my kitchen window. We were living in northeastern Iowa near the Mississippi River. What we saw was 7 to 8 foot tall, bipedal with muscular arms and legs and humanoid. It was pale and hairless. It would lean out from behind a tree in the forest behind our house. If you moved about, it would pop back behind a tree. We never saw more than one at a time, but there seemed to be more than one as height varied. Now, we sometimes saw it multiple times a day, but the behavior was always the same. It seemed wary of us, but if we strayed out of sight, it would lean out into the view for a few seconds at a time. When we sent the dog out, it would run off into the forest after it, but never chased it into view, so that told us nothing. I viewed it through a rifle scope and got a good long look at it silhouetted against the snow behind the trees. It was creepy, like a slender man or something. I could determine the height by going out and measuring the trees we saw it next to. I, of course, did not shoot it since you should not shoot what you cannot identify. And the only large bipedal hereabouts are people, though nothing human is that tall or narrow. We knew the local legends, and this matched the description and behavior. We dug out our trail camera and put the but the mysterious being was never recorded. I tried to take photographs of it, but when I thought that I had captured it on camera or on my phone, nothing was ever there. That was 5 years ago, and we have since moved away and now live in Alabama." In this next account, two friends in the Philippines encounter a tall, dark, slouched, hairy humanoid while driving. They both panicked at the time. The witness wanted more information on this creature. So he writes me, I was staying in the Philippines for a month with an old friend in 2006. We were driving in the late evening when we stopped to look at something we had seen off the side of the road. Now, this area is quite rural and forested, and it's easy to drive on poorly paved roads for a while before encountering another vehicle. Driving at a cautious speed in the tall surrounding brush that looked like corn stalks amongst the forest, we noticed a large dark figure well around or over 6'5", rushing through or 6.5 foot, excuse me, rushing through the field. Seeing as it hadn't met a single individual past 5'7" in my time in this area of the Philippines, I freaked out and my friend slammed on the brakes. We both observed it in silence. It looked at us, not menacing, but there was like an eerie feeling not knowing what the intentions were of this looming figure that could easily rush at us. And since we were only 30 to 40 feet away at that point, after about a half a minute, it just turned back into the stalks, heading towards its initial direction. My friend and I sat in stunned silence before we composed ourselves enough to give each other a quick "what?" Drive away now, look, and then continue our panic journey back. We spoke little of the incident on our trip and haven't told many people aside from close friends because Asian Bigfoot Sasquatch in the Philippines? Okay, sure. So back to sleep. So go back to sleep. I have never been exactly sure what I saw. It certainly didn't have the face or appearance of a bear. It looked more like a dark, tall, slouched, hairy humanoid figure. It was certainly not a man, though. That's my experience. Haven't had reason to return to the Philippines since then, and I really don't want to. I don't know what they ran across. There are so many different types of humanoid sightings in the Philippines. I dare venture what they saw. Though I will say I have never heard of anything that even resembled a Bigfoot being talked about. But then again, I don't know. Now, in this next account, the witnesses who were living in Soviet Belarus at the time saw a hairless, pale humanoid through their window. After reporting it to the KGB, they were forced to relocate and remain quiet. So he states, I never saw a UFO, but I saw an entity mostly associated with UFOs. I grew up in USSR, in now northern Belarus, until I was 13 years old. I now live in the United States. 41 years ago, my mother and I saw an entity outside looking in at us through the window. It was hairless, pale white, with huge bulging black eyes and had teeth that were very small, very well spaced, skinny, and pointed, almost like an anglerfish. We hid for hours until we heard my father drive towards the house. We both looked out the window to see the being and then stood up from behind a wall. It was much taller than a human and it was hiding behind the wall, and I believe it was waiting for us to come outside. My father drove up the driveway and he saw the silhouette of its body from the back. It was hunched over, staring at the car. My father saw it in the headlights and what it looked like perfectly. He drove at it and it ran away into the brush around the house. It never made a sound. It seemed smart but cautious, and the overwhelming feeling I got that night was that it was vicious and violent. My parents spoke with the police as they were so horrified about the encounter. Then, after speaking to the KGB, we were relocated and forced never to speak of the event to anyone. Within 30 hours, I was living in a new home nearly 100 kilometers away. I have searched for many years for an explanation. I've spoken with government officials in Belarus. I have interviewed people who live near our home more than about 10 years ago, but I have no answers. So I did talk to the witness. The KGB, which is State Security Committee of the Republic of Belarus at the time, was very paranoid when there was an unexplained sighting. But this incident seems to be a bit over the top. Were they hiding something? I don't know. But since he lived in the United States, I was able to call him and talk to him. Now, this next account, two brothers are hiking in the woods near their home in Northumberland County, Pennsylvania. Well, one of the pair encounters a large, lanky, pale being that soon vanishes. So he writes, Sir, about 3 years ago, I had a strange encounter in the length of woods that borders my house in Northumberland County, Pennsylvania, near Ellisburg. It was winter, and I was on one of my routine hikes with my brother. We would periodically stop and rest, listening to the sounds of the forest. We were climbing a steep hill and having a hell of a time with it. Our march was halted when I stepped into a pothole, and when I finally dragged my foot out, we decided to take a breather. That's when I saw it. We were just standing there making small talk when out of the corner of my eye I saw a figure. I turned and saw a large, lanky creature watching us from above the hill. The very instant my gaze fixed on it, it began to barrel down the hill at us. I tried to run or even alert my brother, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. I heard my brother ask, "What's the matter?" But I couldn't tell him because I didn't know. I didn't know what I was looking at. I was finally able to break my paralysis, and I was about to tell him when what was happening, when then it was gone. Just poof, like smoke in the wind. I hauled my butt out of there. If I was to describe the thing, I would say it was about 6'6". It had a slim build and it was completely nude. Its body was pale. I never caught sight of its face or any reproductive parts, but I have the feeling it was male. Every time I look back at it, I try to analyze what it might have been, and I always come up short. I can't come up with a believable or concrete explanation. I sometimes doubt I saw anything at all. Granted, this is not the first strange experience I've had in the woods. This disembodied baby's cry come to mind. Now, I had to ask, was it a flesh and blood hominid or an apparition or possibly a multidimensional being? Or maybe something completely different. A while ago, I received another interesting but very brief account from a reader in Pennsylvania. She stated that she witnessed what looked like a feral human while in the vicinity of Teodocton State Forest, which is in Lycoming County, which is in the area, same northern central Pennsylvania, during the late 1970s. This being was described as only 4 foot tall with reddish hair all over the body, though sparse on the chest where she noticed that she thought were breasts. Now, the facial features were human in all respects. Now, the hominin stood for a few seconds, making no sound, turned to its left, took a step, and faded away as if it were walking through a wall of water. The email didn't go into much more detail, but she did state that the area did have old ghost towns in it. And Sean Forker, who's part of our team, has talked to me about these ghost towns or abandoned towns in that area. He lives up in Williamsport. So I don't know. This particular hominin, I don't know if it was a small Bigfoot or what it was, but it didn't really seem by the description, but who knows. Now, in the next account, a couple are exploring an infamous bridge near Corydon, Indiana, when they hear a noise underneath the structure. They witness a pale, black-eyed humanoid squatted and digging. So the witness states, I was in Corydon, Indiana in the summer of 2017. My wife, now my ex, and I heard stories of the legend of Lickford Bridge and decided to check it out for ourselves. The story goes that back in the day, the man who used to own the land would take his workers to the bridge and slit their throats and dump their bodies into the river below. In more modern times, after the house was renovated along with the bridge, a father killed his young family and buried them underneath the porch before killing himself on the bridge. There are police records from that time, and you can see where the porch of the house had been dug up. So it was around 1 a.m. when we decided to go. It was a humid, rather hot summer night, and we were driving with the windows down in a black car. And as we turned down Lickford Road to go to the bridge, which was far back in the boonies, it began to get colder. By the time we arrived at the bridge, it was cold enough to see your breath. After crossing the bridge, we noticed what had to have been thousands of fireflies in the trees looking like Christmas lights. Even after going to the house, we never felt any sense of dread or fear, just a general spooky vibe from the abandoned building. Now, on the way back towards the bridge, as we were about to cross, we heard a noise off to our left down by the bank. I figured it sounded like a deer hoofing the ground or something along those lines. And as we went closer to investigate, it became clear it was the sound of digging and the dirt was occasionally thrown into the water. When I shined my flashlight down the bank, we saw what appeared to be a person in a squatted position and rapidly throwing dirt over their shoulder while digging. Upon closer inspection, the figure was pale white and seemingly emaciated. As my light went up to its back and came closer to its head, it stopped digging and its head shot up quickly as it briefly turned its face towards us. All I remember seeing was sunken black eyes. We had to brake for the car. Now the black car was covered in dust from the dirt road leading to the bridge. And when I shined my light on my car, I saw several handprints with elongated fingers. We drove away and vowed never to come back. So that's the last account, folks. You got any questions? Put them all in caps, put it up there, and I'll try to answer it. And I see Paula mentioned something about aswongs are creepy. People don't know what aswongs are supposedly. They're supposedly a vampire like being that lives in the Philippines. And I've had a lot of aswang accounts sent to me. I don't think that's what this was, but because they never really mentioned anything about wings, so I don't know what it was. So you got any questions? Put them up there, folks. Sir Wolf. Hi, Lon. What do the native people say? I believe they are indigenous to the USA. No accounts elsewhere. Yeah, we've had accounts. There have been accounts worldwide. Not as many as there have been in the United States. Through my research for my book, um, it seems like most of the indigenous tribes that have something similar to this in their lore seem to think it was some type of manifestation of a ghost or, you know, that was spiritual, non corporeal. Um, but they really never gave it any names from what I could determine. Jose Sanchez, Lon, have these gray crawlers ever been seen in groups before, or do they seem to be always spotted alone? Most times they're spotted alone. Every once in a while, I'll get maybe a pair that are seen. It's very rare. It's mostly just singular beings. Uh, Fakir Furt, could you describe a tulpa? A tulpa and a thought form are basically the same. It's a mind manifested entity. Um, in other words, the human mind manifests a being of some type. It's not spiritual. It's a manifested being from a person's mind, just like a poltergeist. A poltergeist is exactly the same thing. If somebody came up to me and said, "Well, poltergeist is a tulpa or a thought form," I would say absolutely because that's basically what they are. Um, but there have been some research into tulpas and thought forms where a group of people have literally manifested these thought form type beings. So that's what a tulpa is. Uh, has it ever really been proven as to being able to be manifested through thought and through group thought or to that effect? Yeah, I guess to a point. But it's just another one of the mysteries that we just have not really figured out. We do know of a poltergeist, but as far as cryptids go, look, if you look at the research, if you look at the theory, I believe it's possible that it could happen, but we haven't any proof of it. Walter T. Rogers, what do you think these creatures are? Are they related to I guess you're saying UFOs. I Rarely is there any UFO or UAP sightings associated with these beings. They just seem to show up from nowhere. Um, look, I told you I wrote the book. I'd have no idea what these things are. If I had to guess, I would state that they're probably multidimensional or interdimensionals, and that that they are able to be portal travelers, just like a lot of other cryptids, I believe, are as well. I mean, people have their own theories as to what these things may very well be, and of course, since this phenomena is not that old, I mean, even though there have been sightings back decades ago, uh, it has become more prominent with the internet, and has had gotten that meme type of distinction that people describe as being just like made up or creepy pasta or whatever you want to call it. I think there are some examples of possible maybe gray alien beings, tall grays like that could be mistaken for these beings. I don't know. But for the most part, what people have been describing does not look or seem to be an extraterrestrial or a gray or whatever. It's something much different than that. And they're not always white. I mean, we've had various colors in the book itself. There's various colors of these beings. Um, but there have been times when people have literally had some contact with them. I mean, physical contact. Not a lot, but there has been some physical contact. Arla Snyder, are there any reports of violent encounters with these pale crawlers? I don't know if you really want to call it violent. They seem to like to chase people sometimes. We had an encounter that was reported to me from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where a woman had been driving a van, and this thing ran out of the woods near the road and got into the van. Well, she was absolutely terrified. Um, it did make a little bit of contact with her. I think it touched her shoulder, but it eventually ran out the back of the van. And at the time, her and her husband were looking for a home to move into because they had just moved into the area. So, yeah, I actually talked to her, and like I said, it was included in the book, but it was very strange. And this crawler was like a tan color; it wasn't white. Paranormalism net. Have the pale crawlers ever been seen in areas of other cryptid sightings, and have there been recurring sightings in the same area? There have been recurring sightings, not a lot, but there have been a few. As far as being around other cryptids, not to the point where I believe that that they were associated with each other at all. There are areas where there's a lot of cryptid sightings. And here in Pennsylvania in particular, we have been getting reports of these crawler humanoids in areas where there is Bigfoot activity and even other cryptids. I don't know if there's a connection. I see Nancy Malcolm has on there any connection to pale crawlers and Bigfoot. I really don't think there is. Though they have been seen in the same area, but I just don't think there's any association with. Sir Wolf Hylon, could there be a byproduct of skinwalkers trapped or cursed somehow? Well, skinwalkers are not cryptids, basically. I mean, I guess you could classify them, even though they're are a manifestation of a human witch or in traditional means. So it wouldn't really have anything to do with skinwalkers and these crawler humanoids because the areas where these show up. I mean, there are lots of different places, and a lot of times it has nothing to do with indigenous folks. So I don't think there really is a connection there. But you never I've always learned, and I have learned that never be surprised, but by something that'll come into me and it'll entirely blow up my theory. So maybe one time we'll get something, but at this point, I just really don't see a connection with them. Jose Sanchez, maybe assuming that crawlers are omnivorous, have there ever been reports eating anything at all given their exaggerated thin composures? There have been reports of them eating or scavenging on dead animals in the woods, on roadsides, and such. As far as actually getting other food, I don't know. But some people have reported seeing them scavenge roadkill or something that was dead in the woods. Marla Snyder, any thoughts that the pale crawlers could be like drones, sort of worker bees for the higher cryptids? That's an interesting concept. I don't know. I just don't know. I really don't see that. I haven't really gotten anything to associate that they are connected with other cryptids. Um, Whatever they are, they seem to be, loners for the most part. I don't think they really have much association with any other phenomena. Jose Sanchez, have the crawlers ever been seen around suburbs or in abandoned fields, farmland most of the time? They've been seen everywhere. There have been a few in the suburbs, just like the one outside of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. If you know that area, it's built up pretty heavy. Uh, but for the most part, most of the sightings are in rural areas. Nancy Malcolm, any connection to pale crawlers and Bigfoot? Like I said before, I don't think there are. I just don't think there are. Jose Sanchez, if you have ever read about Dr. X, he wrote that underground alien bases had bizarre experiments going on. Could their recent appearances be related? Well, first of all, I know who Dr. X is or was. And he showed up in a lot of books that were written by Tim Swartz and uh, Mr. Berkeley and a few other folks. Uh, he supposedly had been part of the military at some point. I do know who it is, but I'm not going to mention who it was. Now, again, I don't know if there's any connection there or not. I mean, a lot of people would try to equate these things to UFO and alien phenomena, but I just think this whole phenomena is something completely different. I see Jose Sanchez had up there. So that would make them biological, maybe not so much interdimensional than just theorizing. Well, look, the interdimensional beings, I believe, are biological. I look at the Mothman, I look at the Bigfoot, I look at the Dogman, and the cryptid canines. I believe they're biological, but I also believe they're interdimensional. I think they have abilities to move in and out somehow. But from all indications and the evidence that we have received from people, especially with Chicago in the Chicagoland area with the winged humanoids, there's something about them being biological, even though I believe they're interdimensional. I see paranormalism net posted up there to Jose about maybe they're not carbon based life forms. Yeah, they could. Maybe they aren't carbon based. We don't know. I mean, there are a lot of theories that a lot of living beings within the universe have are just not carbon based. Yeah, I believe that's possible. So, Cryptid 559. Have you ever heard of pale crawlers encounters along with fog? Um, yeah, occasionally I have. Why that is, I don't know if they use it for cover or what they do. But yeah, there have been a few in inclement weather or foggy weather. Let's see. Nancy Malcolm, could they be cave dwellers that are not out and about or for whatever? I don't know. I know Bigfoot are reported as cave dwellers in mountains. Um, there have been some people who equate them to being feral humans. Again, I don't know if that's true or not. I have had reports in West Virginia and Western or Southwest Virginia in the mountains, in the Appalachians, of people who had encounters with beings very similar to these crawlers that they believe were feral humans. How true that is, I don't know. But there have been people to equate that. And, is it possible? Sure, it's possible. But who knows? Jose Sanchez, maybe they are aware of specific portals. Yeah, I think they are. I think they have the ability to just be able to find them or to detect them and use them, like Bigfoot or Dogman. Sure. Alistair B. Have you ever heard of the created golem? Yeah, in Jewish or Hebrew tradition, golems are supposed to be avengers that are created by clay or dirt. It's a legend, of course, but but it's in the Bible. Okay. Well, folks, I want to thank you for all coming in here. Thanks again, and for watching and chatting. If you donated, it's truly appreciated, and your support is what makes this possible. So please like, subscribe, and share. And Ken Ranum, I thank you for your donation of $5. Very much appreciated. If you have a sighting or encounter report that you would like to be considered for the personal reports show and are posted on Phantoms and Monsters, feel free to forward it to me at lawnstricklerphantomsandmonsters.com. So, if you do have any suggestions for next week's show, send it to my email, lawnstricklerphantomsandmonsters.com, or go to my Facebook, use Messenger, or however you want to do it. And I'll give you 24 hours or so to make some suggestions so I have enough time to dig them up. But there it is. So, anyway, until we meet again, I want you to stay healthy, safe, have a great weekend. Stay cool because I know around here it's getting warm, and down south of here it's getting really warm. So have a good night. Take care. Talk to you next week.